Hey, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about the pilot for DC's Legends of Tomorrow on the CW? Stick around and find out. All right. Um, okay, so I'm Peter Franson from ChristianGeekCentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review for DC's Legends of Tomorrow. I was not going to watch this. I've been kind of sick this week, and my voice really wasn't feeling up to it. I just wanted to take it easy. But during my lunch break, there was some other stuff I couldn't get done, I realized, in my other work, and so I had time to justify watching this pilot. And I hate Arrow. I stopped watching Flash, watched it for a season and 3 episodes, and then I was like, done, can't do it. Just way too much CW in those shows. And so I've not really had an interest in watching this. I just kind of watched it on a whim. And so, if you like those other CW shows, you're probably going to like this. You're probably really excited about this. You probably already know what my opinion on this one is going to be. So you don't need to stick around if you want to hear somebody... if you don't want to hear somebody bad-mouthing a show that you're really excited about. I'm thrilled for you. Awesome that you have a show that you love. I didn't love it. I'm not going to keep watching it. I'll just put it right there. I could actually end this review, but let me just tell you actually why. First off, the main thing is just character motivations. It's really important for me, even if a movie or TV show isn't character-driven, which is really my preference, I need to have motivations of the characters that I at least understand or can relate to in some way, and I had a really hard time finding motivations in this show of this cast of characters that I could make sense of. If you're not familiar with the basic premise, they're taking guest superhero and villain characters from both Arrow and the Flash TV series, and they're spinning off a new show featuring them, in which they are gathered together by a time traveler from the future in order to avert the global conquering by Vandal Savage, who's like a classic villain from DC Comics, who's immortal. And so they're basically going to be, in this series, presumably jumping around time, trying to find Vandal Savage at various points in his life and try to kill him, so that he can't take over the world 150 years from our future and just be a horrible, horrible blight on humanity, or the end of humanity even. So, the fate of the world is at stake, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't have a prior knowledge of these characters from their appearances in The Flash and Arrow, I think you're really going to be hurt in terms of connecting with them. Now, I'd seen, I think, 1 or 2 episodes, the early ones, featuring Ray Palmer, the Atom, played by Brandon Routh, formerly Superman in Superman Returns. And so I knew a little bit about the character and kind of, what makes him tick a little bit, and so that was helpful. I didn't know really anything about the White Canary character. I saw 1 episode of Arrow with her when she was Black Canary early on in her story. I've seen Captain Cold and Heatwave from, Flash. I don't really find them really interesting as either performers or as characters. Who else is in this? Oh yeah, I do like, I can't remember his name now, Victor Garber, who plays Professor Stein, one half of the character Firestorm, the other half being Jefferson Jackson, a young 20-year-old, I think, who together they form Firestorm. And I didn't follow the episodes that really involved the former one half of Firestorm, Ronnie Raymond, who's now, I guess, dead, and now this new kid is part of it. I think I did see his episode that introduced him, but I didn't really follow through after that, and but now, I don't have really exposure to their relationship and their dynamic. I did not see any of the Hawkman, Hawkgirl episodes from Flash, Arrow, whatever the crap that they were on. I think they were on both, maybe. So I didn't see any of that. So but I'm familiar with their dynamic a little bit from the comic book story, in which they are these, these lovers that keep reincarnating, and they're destined to always be together, and they're always destined to be murdered by Vandal Savage. I can't remember if Vandal Savage was specifically the one that was murdering them in the comics over and over again, but that's what it is in this show. And I guess this time around, as in the most recent reboot of the characters in the comics, he remembers their past lives, but she doesn't. And so the relationship, even though they're destined to be a couple every time, it's kind of one-sided at this point. And so I love that concept. I thought it was, played out in some wonderful ways in the comic books when Jeff Johns was handling it anyway. And so I guess it would have been nice to kind of get in on the ground floor of their characters and their story without having to watch more episodes of Flash and Arrow. But, I guess this spin-off show is really for people who are already existing fans of Flash and Arrow. At least that's how they're treating the pilot, because they're not in this pilot really getting you into the backstories of these characters. They're kind of assuming that you know who these characters are, and I think that really is going to potentially hurt the audience of the show. The potential for the show to have an audience that is the same or bigger than the audiences for Arrow and Flash. We'll see. Let's see here. There's just a lot of character decisions that didn't make sense. Maybe they would make more sense if I had, put in the time for the Arrow and Flash episodes to get to know these characters a little bit more. I don't think so, because oftentimes in those shows, characters, who I've watched from the very beginning still do things that I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Real people do not behave this way. Real people do not react to situations like this in this way. Even if you take out the fantastical elements, these are not real human reactions to whatever the non-fantastical analog situation would be. So, like, all these guys get kidnapped by Rip Hunter. So, spoiler, if you haven't seen the show, I guess I'm just going to talk about plot details here. They get kidnapped by Rip Hunter, the time traveler who wants to, make them heroes and stuff like that and help him out. They all wake up and they don't immediately attack him. They don't immediately at least try to gain a defensive position or something. They've all been knocked out by this complete stranger who, by the way, gave them plenty of time as he pulled out his strange future weapon, and none of them reacted, in all the time he gave them to defend themselves. And then when they wake up, they still don't they just stand there and listen to this guy talk and use his hand to talk about the future. Whatever. And then Professor Stein, drugs Jefferson, who's just 20 years old, knocks him out to take him along on this adventure. Jefferson does not want to go on this time-traveling adventure, and this older doctor, that is like freaking creepy and illegal, and just, I know that in the comics at some point, Stein, I think it was, kind of, became a flawed, morally questionable character, but I mean, I don't think they're intending to really have him go a dark, sinister route. It didn't seem like the flavor of the show they were going for. And yet, that decision is such a strange, dark, weird one for this guy to be knocking out and kidnapping this 20-year-old who's in many ways still a kid. Oh my gosh. Weird. And then also, when they're away from Hunter's time-traveling ship for a while, it takes Stein's connection with Jefferson for him to know that someone is, like, shooting at the ship and blowing it to pieces and stuff. Does Rip Hunter not have a freaking smartphone at least? At least today, if this thing existed, there would be an app for it. You could say, I need one of those apps that tells me when my time machine is being attacked and damaged the crap out of. But he didn't have that. No, there was like no connection. I know they were in 1975, but I don't think he needed to blend in that well and forsake all future technology. Why did he not take some kind of an app with him that would say, oh, Rip Hunter, your ship is being destroyed? What else? Oh yeah, and the whole motivation of, like, Vandal Savage starting world wars. Why would he start world wars? And, like, Professor Stein is like, what better way to keep the world from noticing a psychopathic immortal walking around than to busy them with war? I'm like, really? So, like, World War I was just like, hey, everybody, look, there's a war going on, just in case anybody might notice that I'm walking around. What? Excuse me. Didn't make any sense. So the visual effects and the stunts, I think, are fine for TV. They're not pushing the boundaries like I would like. And the Hawk people still look like people kind of being hung and swung around on cables before they're dropped, rather than people that are actually flying by their own, by their own ability to carry themselves around. It's just the way their weight kind of hangs. It just looks like bad wire work, even though you can't see the wires. What else? Oh yeah, and there's an interesting motivation that that they don't call into question. It actually seems to be like this thing that we ought to be able to relate to. When they all decide whether or not they're going to go on this time traveling adventure, like the two villains, and who, by the way, one of them, I mean, good grief, Heatwave. I know you're not so smart, but you understand you're traveling through time. And so when he looks at that monitor and sees, like, Welcome Back, Carter, or whatever the show from the 70s is, You know, he's like, why does this dumb channel just keep showing repeats? I'm like, dude, that's a lame joke. I don't honestly believe that you are really that stupid. You know, I like a person, if you're gonna do like an intelligence gag and like this person is stupid, then I mean like, have their intelligence clearly understood and consistent throughout. Because he understood they were time traveling a second ago, didn't he? I mean, is he really that dumb? And yet he's able to function so well in so many other circumstances. Yeah, I don't get it. Anyway, so the villain motivation and the anti-hero White Canary motivation and Ray Palmer's motivation, all of them basically for sticking around, even though Rip Hunter lied to them about so many things, is that it's a chance to basically redefine their futures. They found out, oh, we're not significant. We don't affect the timeline. That's why Rip Hunter chose us, because, you know, if we die, we won't be missed, because nobody cares about us. So what they want to do is make their mark on the world. Ray Palmer talks about wanting his life to matter. So I see in all four of these characters this desire for significance. And that is just so wired into, I think, who we are. We desire significance, and yet they are looking to find significance in the place that we all naturally go to that we ought not to, because we will never find true significance there. We will never be satisfied. And that is going to the well of actions, accomplishments, deeds. That's where we try to go. That's where when we're mourning the death of people, we talk about the things that they accomplished, because in our minds we just equate accomplishments with worth, accomplishments with significance. And so I think that this show, one of the main motives for all of these characters, even one of the true blue heroes, you might even say, even though I guess he is kind of self-absorbed and stuff like that, Ray Palmer, you know, one of the main motives is the search for significance. Yeah, that's a little bit unusual, a little bit of a bummer of a kind of motive. But anyway, I mean, that's just kind of the natural state. That's what I naturally do. I wish I didn't. I want to get my mind away from that. I want my identity to be where it belongs, and that is in Christ and in the love that he has for me, that the cosmic God of the universe, for some reason, loves you and loves me and died for us. And I mean, there's just so many things that make us significant, and they are all not about what we accomplish. And when we try to conjure up our significance through what we do, we find ourselves unsatisfied again and again and again. Because that's not ultimately where our significance comes from. Anyway, but not for those reasons, but just because of my general tastes in shows and fiction and, you know, and what I saw in this pilot, I will not be watching any more of this show. If you enjoy it, I hope that you do continue to enjoy it and that it scratches all those fun itches for you. I'd love to get your thoughts on this in the comments below. And then I hope you join us, boom, at ChristianGeekCentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. All right, I got to pick up my son.